My mother forced me to play hide and seek every night at 9. One night, it wasn't a game. My mother always made me play hide and seek with her. It was just her and me, and we played at 9. Each time, without failure, she told me to ignore her during the game. She told me that she would purposefully try to trick me, but, if you really wanted to trick somebody, why tell them anything? We played in the park. I thought this was normal. I knew other families didn't do this, but at the same time, I thought there was nothing wrong with us doing it. I liked the park after all. During the night the air was so fresh, and it was silent, and the trees seemed larger than usual. She counted down from 100, giving me ample time to run away. My general competitiveness always made me run away and as far away as I could. I'd find some space behind many trees, and I'd lie down. The park was large, but somehow my mother would always manage to walk past me at least 3 times in those 20 minutes. I'd always hear her speaking as she walked past me. "Come out, Clara. Clara, please come out. I'm sick of this stupid game, Clara. It's cold and I just want to go home." I ignored her. When we first started with the games, I'd been foolish enough to leave my hiding spot. My mother's face immediately turned into one of fury. She'd walk up and grab me tightly by the shoulder as she scolded me relentlessly. "I told you not to listen to me, didn't I?" She would drag me back to the car and ignore me until the next day when we played. I didn't know why she did it. After I'd stopped listening to her during the 20 minutes of game time, it would no longer trick me. I knew she was lying, and it simply seemed like a waste of breath and energy to keep calling out for me. She got angry when she found me too. The park was a huge place, and if she hid somewhere I would never find her, but somehow my mother was excellent at tracking me down. It was like she sniffed me and hunted me down. Instead of getting angry at me, she got disappointed. She'd sigh loudly, and her eyes would tear up before she dejectedly walked to the car. That gave me the worst feeling ever, filling me with inadequacy. One time, she found me after only 2 minutes, and she broke down sobbing. I didn't get it. I felt a huge urge to win. I needed it, so I started to get creative. I hid myself in the bushes. I'd changed my clothing to be more green and black and generally more inconspicuous. I got high up in trees, so it would be difficult to see me from the ground. I learned how to stay still, really, really still. And when I won, my mother would give me a smile. It wasn't a smile of happiness or a smile of pleasure. It was more a relieved smile, but I felt so proud when I saw it. We'd go home, and I'd have an easy time falling asleep. Then my father came. One day, when I came back from school, I saw him talking to my mother. He was almost never home. Actually, I'd seen him twice in my entire life, and my mother never really spoke about him. He was really just a stranger to me. I noticed the expression on my mother's face immediately. It was pale, white, shaking, eyes wide. I couldn't hear what he was saying, so I got closer and towards them. Of course, their conversation stopped just as I did it. While my father stopped speaking, the expression on my mother stayed the same. He turned to me and smiled in a wolfish way. It made me recoil away with disgust. He sneered. He fucking sneered. I thought it was normal. That was how my classmates acted after all. Later that same day, when my father was off in the toilet, my mother got close to me and whispered, "Don't come out." Not even after 20 minutes. My father got really energetic right before bedtime. I thought we'd skip the whole hide and seek thing. My mom looked really sick, and looking at the clock, she said, "Let's take a trip to the park." I immediately noticed that she didn't mention hide and seek. "Why?" my father asked. "Why not? Get some fresh air maybe." "Fine," he said. I like them active anyway. What the hell did he mean by that? Mom told me to change with a certain look, and I caught what she meant immediately. Put on hiding clothes. After doing it, we got into the car and we drove to the park. My mother was silent the entire way, but my father hummed. We walked together in the park for a while, my dad mumbling about work. I don't remember much of it. Honestly, it didn't sound like any job I'd ever heard. Then, suddenly my mother pointed at a tree in the distance. I noticed that it was the same tree she found me hiding behind the last time she caught me. These trees get so old. Then, they die. It's a shame they're stuck in place, unable to get away from the virus. She was saying, get away and hide. Death is the way of all living things, Dad said. No need to fear it. I think I saw a squirrel in that tree, I said. I'm going to go check it out. I disappeared into the forest I'd grown well acquainted to. I got behind a hill before changing direction and moving away. I made sure to try to move on the spots that wouldn't leave a mark. I needed to get far away before they noticed something was up. I thought about climbing a tree and hiding there, or about diving into a couple of bushes. Trees were only effective if people didn't check. Bushes worked great, but you'd have a small, if no, view of your surroundings. I chose the bushes, jumping into them and trying to control my breath. After a couple of minutes, I heard my parents walking in the distance. Clara, Dad shouted. Where are you, sweetheart? If you're hurt, please say something and we'll help. Clara, Mother said. Clara, can you hear me, darling? My heart beat faster. I knew for a fact that I shouldn't leave the bushes. That was the absolute worst thing that could happen. I kept me breathing under check as they moved further and further away from me. Then, they came back. Please, Clara, your dad isn't dangerous. Please come out. Clara, please, I need to get going soon. Please come out. Clara, Mom said. Where are you? Stop this silly nonsense, Dad said. Their voices eventually faded out. I stayed there, in the same position, for nearly a whole hour. My body started to ache, and I could feel insects crawling around on the back of my leg. I really wanted to leave this position. I heard a stick snap in the distance. It came from behind me. I hadn't heard their voices at all, had they just stopped speaking. That terrified me, and I felt I needed to turn around and get a view, but I knew that would give me away. Clara, stop with this silly nonsense. Come out. I was entirely silent. Clara, please come out. Her voice was turning more and more desperate, more guttural. Fortunately, it was what seemed to be around 70 meters away from me. But she was approaching. Clara, Mom said, I'm getting tired. I just want to go home, eat, and sleep. I stayed silent as the voice grew louder. She was approaching me. I know you're in the area. It's only a moment of time before I find you. I will skin you, huh? I'll start with your forearms, peeling off your skin with a dull knife, just like peeling back cheese. I wager there'll be lots of blood coming out. And screaming. I won't be able to focus, but that's all right. I can always switch to your other arm. She came closer. You won't like it. I certainly wouldn't, but I'm not as stupid and fucking disgusting as you are, Clara. No. I'm glad I'm not a creature of filth like you. The only good you can serve is by being in my belly. By fueling me. I'll find you. The voice was only 20 meters away. You'll regret not coming out. 10 meters. You know, I don't eat the bones. They get stuck in my throat, but I can't leave them. I'll probably take them home with me and suck on them. They have a good taste, you know. It'll be perfect. 2 meters. She giggled. Did she find me? Oh no. I debated whether I should stay still and hope for the best or if I should look back. My fear was killing me, and it had to know, but I know looking would make noise. No. I had to stay still. I know where you are, she said. Fuck. But then, she began walking away from my spot. I'll suck on your eyeballs before swallowing them. They're better whole, and they're always wet and squishy so they go down the throat easily. If not, there's always blood. Oh, a mouthful of warm blood. Is there a better feeling? I stayed still for that entire night, even after I was certain that they'd gone away. It was only when the sun was above me, and I could hear other children, that I stood up. One child jumped back and shrieked. He must have gotten properly terrified. Then, I made my way back home. Dad wasn't there, but Mom was. She hugged me. I found a zipper on the back of my neck. I found a zipper on the back of my neck. I found it by accident. I was putting my hair up, something I did almost every day. My hand brushed against something at the bottom of my hairline. It could have been a large skin tag. I finished tying my hair up and grabbed my phone so I could see the thing better. When I saw it, I wasn't sure what it was. It was too big for a skin tag, but not the shape of a tick or something foreign. I realized as I stared at it that it was the top of a zipper. It was darker than my skin tone. It was more like a rosy gray. I nervously reached behind me to touch it. It was smooth, as if made of metal. But it wasn't metal. It was skin. Just not my skin. I was able to flip the zipper top up and down. It didn't hurt, but I expected it to. How long had it been there? I didn't notice it before. A rational person would have called a doctor. Called someone, at least. But I was compelled to open it. I pulled the zipper down just a little bit. It still didn't hurt. As I pulled, zipper teeth emerged. No blood came out, but my skin began to peel apart. I knew I should stop. My fingers trembled as I pulled a bit more. The skin easily separated. The top was 2 inches below my hairline when I heard my husband wake up. I ran to the door and slammed it shut. I locked it, my breath coming quick. I didn't want him to see what I was doing. I knew, on some visceral but invisible level, that it was wrong. The zipper scared me. What was underneath the zipper scared me more. I heard him lumbering towards the bathroom. He turned the knob. Leah, let me in. I have to pee. I'm in here, I called, my voice shaking and off. Can I just pee real quick? He was barely awake. No. Go downstairs. He paused. Are you okay? I'm fine. I didn't mean to yell, but there it was. The silence that followed was heavy with hurt. He waited for a moment, maybe hoping for an apology or some sort of explanation. I gave him neither. Eventually his footsteps sounded down the hall. I felt relief and fear in equal measures. After a few breaths, I returned to the mirror, my phone in my hand. While I was able to see the zipper again, a thick black liquid had begun dripping from the opening. It was too dark to be blood. I touched it. It was warm. The substance was sticky, stretching between my fingers. I brought my hand to my face, examining it closer. In the blood were small specks of gold and light. There were little cosmos within the ooze. Max pounded on the door. Why aren't you answering me? My eyes left my hand and went to the door. How long had I been standing there? Stop ignoring me. I'm not, I whispered. What are you doing in there? Nothing, I whispered. I heard his body slump against the door. He was crying again. How long are you going to punish me? I wasn't punishing him. This wasn't about him. Why does he always think everything is about him? I was at the mirror again, pulling the zipper further down. The black liquid was mostly contained within the zipper, but droplets made their way down my back. Something large was pushing against my spine. I could see it, like a fetus's fist against a mother's stomach. It pressed outward, making my neck and back look bumpy. There was something in there. Something that needed to come out. I pulled the zipper until it was down to my shoulders. I began to hear gurgling coming from the opening. For a moment I thought spiders were pouring from the teeth, but I blinked and they were gone. I had never felt so scared and yet so compelled. Obsessed. My hand shook so much I couldn't hold the zipper to pull it. A slick hand shot out of the opening, covered in the black substance. I screamed. The hand flicked off the substance, almost nonchalantly, and grasped the zipper. Max's voice penetrated the scene. What is going on? Are you hurt? I fell to my knees as the foreign hand pulled the zipper further. It was at my shoulder blades, then the middle of my back, and then the lower back. My skin was peeled forward like a cocoon. The hand withdrew inside me. After a few moments, a leg revealed itself, stretching out my body like a dancer. Then another leg. Bent backward, feet now on the floor, a figure completely emerged. It straightened itself. Long hair stuck to its body. I crawled away from it, terrified. My skin was still open and gushing the black substance onto the floor. I could still see Cosmos in the ichor. The figure turned towards me. It was a woman, naked, bathed in black. She bent forward and smiled at me. One more thing, she said in a voice I recognized. She reached over me, shoving her hand into the opening on my back. For the first time I felt pain. Her hand inside me felt like a hot knife. I tried to hold in my screams but didn't succeed. She rooted around for what felt like a lifetime. Finally, when I felt close to passing out, she removed her hand. And it was an axe. The axe was too large to fit inside me. She slung it over her shoulder, still smiling. I heard my own breath. Panting. I also heard the faint voice of Max from outside the door. He was begging, crying. He was knocking, pounding. The figure noticed too, her face turning towards the door. "Don't," I whispered. I knew what she wanted to do. I knew, because it was what I wanted. She set the axe down and turned to the mirror, putting her hair up. She wiped the substance off her face. Without looking at me, she said, "Wait here. I'll take care of it." I gathered my knees to my chest, sobbing into them. She grabbed the axe. Unceremoniously, she unlocked the door and opened it. Max's voice was small as he said, "Yeah." She closed the door behind her. "My son told me what my husband does when I'm not home. Hank, can you run down to the basement and fetch me some more flour?" I asked my son, who had just come downstairs for breakfast. He plopped down onto one of the kitchen chairs and shook his little head. "No," he muttered, "I can't." I craned my neck to look at him from the pancake mix bubbling on the stove. He seemed fidgety and pale, not at all like his usual self. Why not? He stared at me, his eyes wide. "There are ghosts in the basement, Mom." "Oh, don't be silly," I chuckled. "Ghosts aren't real, sweetheart. Or even if they are, they live in very old, abandoned houses. Much older than ours." Hank was silent, watching me as I poked at the batter in the pan. "That's not true, is it?" His voice was earnest and eerily calm, sending chills crawling up my spine. "Of course, it's true," I assured him. "Think about it. What is a ghost?" Hank thought for a moment. "Someone who's dead?" I nodded. Exactly. And no one has died in our house. We bought it brand new last year, remember? So, we can't have ghosts. How do you know? My heart skipped a beat and I turned to look at him again. For a 7-year-old, Hank was an incredibly deep thinker, a quality that had the capacity both to impress and to unnerve. How do I know what? How do you know that no one has died in our house? I tapped the spatula on the edge of the pan, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. Well, wouldn't we know if anyone had? Hey, darling, could you run down and get that flour, please? These pancakes are breaking apart. There was a pause. No, Mom. I sighed impatiently. Hank, your dad's downstairs. The lights will be on. Go on, there's no ghost, trust me. But Hank sat there, kicking his legs under the table, visibly uncomfortable. This had never been a problem in the past, and I couldn't think of any reason for it, aside from some silly horror story his friends might have told him at school. Look, how about I call Dad to come get you? I said, making my way towards the basement door, though. No, Mom, don't. Hank jumped to his feet, dashing after me and gripping the hem of my apron. Don't call Dad. Why? His eyes welled up with tears. I don't like him. I stared at him, taken aback. You don't like him? Why? He's a bad person. What? How can you say such a thing? He stuck out his bottom lip. He's very angry. He's not angry, sweetheart. What makes you say that? Well, Hank sounded hesitant. Yesterday, after school, I went down to the basement to ask for some help with the pasta, and he was yelling at the lady. And then he hit her. I froze. What pasta? What lady? He hid his face in my apron and shook his head. I don't know. I put my hands on his shoulders and kneeled in front of him. Hank, can you tell me what happened? My husband was a stay-at-home dad and normally spent his time tinkering in the garage. His only responsibilities were keeping the house tidy and taking care of Hank after school. I always worked late and usually came home long after my son went to bed. Dad always has a new lady in the basement when I come home from school. I'm not allowed to go down there, but I hear them. He says I have to get my own dinner, but last night I forgot to turn off the stove and some water got on my arm. He pulled up his right sleeve, revealing a large area of scorched skin on his forearm. I stared at it, and then at my son in bewilderment, my throat closing up. And then I went downstairs to tell Dad, but he was busy with the lady. He got really angry when he saw me. I didn't know what to say. My heart was thumping fast in my chest, making me feel lightheaded. What happened to the lady, Hank? I whispered. He wet his lips. I don't know. She lives in the basement now. They all do. My blood ran cold. Stay here. I'm going to talk to your father. No. Hank grabbed my sleeve. You can't go, Mom. I have to, baby. Don't worry, the ghosts won't get me. I just need to find out what's going on. No, you can't go, he kept repeating, frantically tugging at my blouse. Dad said you're not supposed to know about last night. I stared at him. What? This is important, Hank. Your father is supposed to be taking care of you. Hank crumpled to the floor, burying his face in his little hands. I'm afraid, he sniffled. I'm afraid that if you tell him, he'll make me return to my grave.